There are current therapies for Alzheimer's disease, and they do provide some modest symptomatic benefits. The problem with the currently available treatments is that they don't affect the underlying disease pathology. So that even though when initially starting these treatments, people do have typically a modest symptomatic improvement, it doesn't change the downward course of the disease. And so ultimately, the disease wins. In this video, we'd like to talk about, first of all, Alzheimer's disease broadly, what it means as a neurodegenerative disease. But secondly, we'd also like to talk about Lilly's commitment to Alzheimer's disease, which now is over 25 years of research into this disorder. Of course, we'd like to talk about solanezumab and the clinical evidence that we have to date that we feel is really very promising in terms of a new disease-modifying treatment for this disease. And then finally, we'll talk about EXPEDITION3. Solanezumab binds to soluble A-beta monomers and clears them out of the brain more quickly. That means that they're cleared out of the brain before they can deposit to form these amyloid plaques. To date, thus far, we've treated over 1,800 people with solanezumab in our clinical trials. Both EXPEDITION1 and EXPEDITION2 did not achieve their primary outcomes. We did find, however, what we thought were some very important secondary analyses. Now, these were secondary, but they were pre-specified secondary analyses. What did make a difference for solanezumab is when we looked at mild patients compared to moderate patients. So for each study, EXPEDITION1 and EXPEDITION2, what we found was a directional signal. It did not achieve statistical significance, showing a treatment effect of solanezumab in the mild patients. So that was present for both EXPEDITION1 and EXPEDITION2. Well, when we pooled the data and achieved a greater sample size, then what we saw for the ADAS-Cog14 and for the ADCS-IADL, we did see statistically significant results. And so for the cognitive measure, the ADAS-Cog14, there was a 34% slowing in the rate of decline for the patients who were treated with solanezumab. For the ADCS-ADL, or in this case the instrumental or IADLs, there was an 18% slowing in the rate of decline for the patients treated with solanezumab. So when you look at the pooled data for the mild patients, even though it's a secondary finding, we find these data to be quite compelling, and we're quite enthusiastic about beginning the EXPEDITION3 study to confirm these results.
The EXPEDITION3 study is a double-blind, placebo-controlled study that will enroll 2,100 patients globally with mild-stage Alzheimer's disease. It is designed to see if solanezumab will slow the cognitive and functional decline in patients with mild-stage Alzheimer's disease compared to placebo. Patients will visit the clinic 22 times every 4 weeks and receive either solanezumab 400 milligrams intravenously or matching placebo. Patients who finish all 22 visits have the opportunity to enroll in an open-label extension study in which they will receive the active drug solanezumab every 4 weeks intravenously. In order to participate in the EXPEDITION3 study, patients must have a clinical diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. For the purposes of this study, mild Alzheimer's disease is defined as having an MMSE score between 20 and 26 inclusive. In EXPEDITION3, patients must show evidence of amyloid pathology. This is a key difference from previous expedition studies. This can be demonstrated either by having a positive amyloid PET scan or showing evidence in CSF markers by lumbar puncture.
What we found in our earlier trials is that over 1/4 of the people in the studies actually probably didn't have Alzheimer's disease. They were misdiagnosed. And so by having a more accurate diagnosis in EXPEDITION3, we think that will improve our ability to show the signal from solanezumab treatment. We have some data, some clinical evidence right now that says that solanezumab appears to be a very promising treatment. It appears to slow down the rate of progression of the disease, and in that way will improve the quality of life for the patients and the caregiver with Alzheimer's disease. One of the things that we've thought about with Expedition 3 is that this is actually likely to be the future of how we approach Alzheimer's disease, both in terms of diagnosis and treatment. We've become more sophisticated. We now know that for patients with mild disease, as good as we may be as clinicians, that we can't always make an accurate diagnosis, and that we need the aid of biomarkers, of some technology, to help us identify exactly the right patients to be enrolled in these trials. So now we have the right patients. We have solanezumab, which targets A-beta, which we think is the underlying pathology of the disease. And in the future, looking forward, what we hope is what we do here in Expedition 3 will turn into the treatment of Alzheimer's disease more broadly in the future. So we're very thankful for all the efforts of the investigators, coordinators, and everyone at the sites.
Join us as we work toward changing the future of Alzheimer's disease management. For more information, please visit the Expedition 3 study website or any of the alternatives provided.